Matthew 15:21-28. From there, Jesus went to the regions of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from those territories came out and shouted, "Show me mercy, Son of David! My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." But he did not respond to her at all. His disciples came and urged him, "Send her away. She keeps shouting out after us." Jesus replied, "I have been sent only to the lost sheep, the people of Israel." But she knelt before him and said, "Lord, help me." He replied, "It is not good to take the children's bread and toss it to dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall off their master's table." Jesus answered, "Woman, you have great faith. It will be just as you wish." And right then her daughter was healed.
Hello again on this 4th of July. It is my privilege to bring the message to you today. Would you pray with me? Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, for you are our strength and our salvation. Amen. As we continue this series on cultivating courage, gleaning spiritual lessons from an insightful book entitled God, Improv, and the Art of Living, this story of Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman is one of the clearest examples of the yes and principle that I can think of, and it's one of the New Testament's strangest stories as well. A woman who is described as an other by virtue of her race, religion, and ethnic identity calls out to Jesus, referring to him as Son of David, and thus acknowledging who Jesus is. Although she's an outsider, she gets it. She asks for his mercy, healing for her demon-possessed daughter. And Jesus, for his part, appears to pay no attention to her at all. To add insult to injury, the disciples try to shoo her away and complain about her. Then Jesus opens his mouth, adding to the tension in a most uncharacteristic way. First, saying the woman is not fit. "I've only been sent to the lost sheep of Israel," the "not you" implied. And then, when she falls to her knees and begs, many of us would interpret his words as essentially calling her a dog. Weird. Not my Jesus, you might say, with the same vehemence that some might say, not my president or not my America. It helps to read this passage in its greater context. Immediately before this incident, Jesus is seen sparring with Jewish legal experts over what is really involved in the honoring of God. That it's what's in the heart of a person that determines contamination or cleanliness before God. Whereupon, Jesus promptly heads into Gentile territory and encounters this woman who gets it, who knows who Jesus is, and who recognizes that grace, even if first proclaimed to Jesus' own people, is big enough to spill over her way because of her faith, in spite of where she comes from. The tenaciousness of this woman, her willingness to step onto the public stage, to engage in offer and counteroffer, makes her a model of courage and a master improviser. Her words don't amount so much to a yes but as they do a yes and. About this unusual dialogue, pastor-author Marianne McKibben Dana writes, "Zing! This is improvisation at its best. The Syrophoenician woman moves the scene forward. She moves Jesus forward. She says, 'This kingdom you're proclaiming, it isn't about what's fair. It's never been about what's fair. You, Jesus, are so much better than fair.' and her overacceptance inspires Jesus, too, to overaccept. Overacceptance is the term McKibben Dana uses to describe yes and, being all in on the stage of life. Not just passively accepting what comes, but fully embracing it. Not just tolerating the presence of others on that stage, but engaging with them as a full partner, foibles and all, ready to move forward, not controlling the outcome, but helping to shape it together. In another chapter of her book, McKibben Dana describes a memorable improv class moment she observed when one player totally misunderstood the action her partner opened with. Instead of becoming defensive, the actor went with it, with hilarious results. She said this incident reminded her how often in life we bring our assumptions and experiences to the stage, convinced that others will understand exactly where we're coming from. And when a misinterpretation occurs, we're faced with a choice. We can dig in our heels and fight to keep our original assumptions in play, or we can get curious about the new direction, set our agenda aside, go along for the ride, and see where we go together. Maybe we don't have it all figured out. Maybe the other person has something to teach us. In our Bible story, Jesus may well have been trying to teach the others around him, in a real-life example, the very principles of inclusion and examining the heart that he'd just been debating with the scribes in the previous scene. Or he may have himself been convinced to change his mind by this scrappy Syrophoenician woman who was gutsy enough to step into the ring and demonstrate the faith that had brought her to seek his aid. Maybe we don't have it all figured out. Maybe the other person has something to teach us. Maybe, if we seek to play well with others, something new and delightful can be created or healed. Last week in Windsor, our Wednesday Zoom Bible study group wrapped up a 5-week series watching and discussing a lecture by theologian Brian McLaren, which he delivered to a conference shortly after the January 6th Capitol uprising. His topic was a Christian response to authoritarianism, and he urged his listeners to acknowledge the role of Christianity in such movements, and to both embody and announce an alternative, which is love-centered, anti-racist, pro-science, and pro-earth. In response to a listener question at the close of his speech, McLaren reminded his audience of Jesus' words in John 15, verse 15, where he says to his disciples, "I no longer call you servants. I have called you friends." He asserted that in making this proclamation, Jesus recognized the danger of the political power dynamics of his time, this tendency to lord power over one's followers. McLaren said this willingness to play well with others, to treat one another as friends, and to reject the thirst for power that we see in the world around us is what is desperately needed in Christianity and other communities of faith today. We need to model a different way of relating to one another, one that embraces difference, expresses wonder and curiosity about others, expresses and expects goodwill. This more egalitarian attitude could be our gift, our contribution toward the rebuilding of neighborhoods, communities, and society, if only we will have the humility and the courage to do so. Let's take a lesson from this unusual example of faithfulness and pray for courage, flexibility, willingness to confront and be confronted in respectful dialogue, to over-accept the offers God gives us, to see our neighbors with new eyes, and to work together with others to heal, restore, and renew. Amen.